Well, look, first of all, I condemn the riots. I think the actions of the rioters were appalling and in some cases actually monstrous, and I'm quite happy to see some of them thrown in jail. But I think the idea that this came out of a clear blue sky or was simply the result of misinformation or disinformation in the wake of those terrible killings in Southport is just fanciful in the extreme. And I think anyone who draws those conclusions probably doesn't quite understand what's going on in some of our communities, because the truth is in many communities across particularly England but other parts of Britain there has been what I've described as a simmering resentment for many years over issues such as economic insecurity, over issues such as the levels of immigration, over concerns over a lack of integration, over crime and antisocial behaviour. And I think that what's been going on is in many ways a reaction to that. And some people have taken it to the extremes and decided to wreak havoc on their streets. But behind those people are millions of law-abiding, decent people who are equally angry, who are not misled by disinformation, but are angry at what they see in their communities and the way that the country is being run, and they're resentful as well. And we need to consider those people too, and not just the rioters.
I have to say I'm quite astounded by some of the framing here, because the idea that we haven't been talking about these issues for decades, and this hasn't been weaponized for decades, and abused and misused for decades, and against the backdrop of some sort of silence on these issues, there's all this resentment that sort of, has been bubbling under the surface. I find that extraordinary, because I feel like we haven't not only spoken about these issues multiple times, and frankly, in ways that are very unhelpful over the past few decades, but that we've actually outdone ourselves in spreading misinformation and disinformation. And I completely disagree that there wasn't a huge amount of disinformation spread around this sort of stuff. But more than that, particularly over the past 20 years, and I would argue that it goes back considerably further than that, but particularly over the past 20 years, what we have seen is far right, and I do call them far right, discourse being mainstreamed